Hey guys, welcome back. And today we're going to be talking about some Jimi Hendrix fills. You know, Jimi Hendrix, of course, was known as, the fiery lead guitar player, the ultimate showman out there. But one of the biggest strengths that he had that most people don't recognize is that he was an incredible rhythm guitar player. You know, he sort of cut his teeth in the Chitlin circuit. He was out with all kinds of bands, Ike and Tina Turner and people like that, really making some incredible music out there as like a background guitar player who's just sort of staying out of the way and playing the fills and making the music happen. So he got a really incredible pocket, some great fill feels, and that was stuff that made it into his rock playing, even though it really came out of like an R&B type of background. So today what I'd like to do is just take you through some of the ideas of some of those fills, walk you through how they work and how you can incorporate and use those in your own playing. So we're going to start off here with a couple of different chord shapes that are really important shapes to them. The first one we're going to talk about is just your E form. So like if you had the cowboy form here, take it up into G. The E form of a chord, a major chord. Now, when you're in any given key, the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord are all major chords. So if, let's say you're in the key of C, you'd have C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, and then B half diminished. But that 1, 4, and 5 are all major chords, okay? That's why they call them major chords, too. They're the most used major chords that are there. All right, so we're going to play some fills just out of these major chords. We're going to play a couple of them that work over all 3 of these chords, so whether you're on a 1 chord, 4 chord, or 5 chord, which is important, and I'll show you how that works in just a minute. But let's say we're in playing a G chord. I'm going to do a couple of fills that are just sort of classic fills of Hendrix. So if you see this little shape here, this little E shape up top, if I do like this, the notes D and G, and I can also do, so that's G to A and D to E. So then I can go down to this next part of the shape, which is B and D, and I can hammer onto that from the A note. And I can also go down to my G note. Okay, so which sounds very like Little Wingish, right? All right. Then I can play some low fills also. Okay, so if I just do, and this is sort of like a, what is that? Castles Made of Sand. That sort of vibe. I can do, so A to B, and then I'm in the same shape where I've got D and G, just like this one. So I'm octave down. You see how those work? And then just octaves down, exact same thing. And one thing that's important is Hendrix was not a super clean player, but that was one of the things that made him sort of magical. You know, his the sloppiness in his playing, which made it so like organic and great. Yeah, just as a quick aside on that, I remember years later seeing Yngwie Malmsteen, and he was an amazing technical guitar player, just as good as you get technically. But he kicked into Red House. So he kicks into Red House and sounded amazing because he's playing, Strat through a big old Marshall. And about 2 measures into it, he starts just shredding with like high technique and super clean. And it totally blew the Hendrix vibe. So it was like fantastic for all of 10 seconds, and then all of a sudden turned into like Yngwie Malmsteen's high technical take on Hendrix. But when you play Hendrix, it is sort of like sloppy and loose in a really good way, though, not in a bad way. Okay, so we've got the high ones, and you got the low, and then you've also got this middle. If you do the G and B. Workable. You also can take, because you did this note, you can also do fourths. And then you can also take this, which works. So this is A and D. Okay, now there's another thing that works. It's a sus4. If I count up from G, G, A, B, C, that's my fourth. So if I go G, A, B, C, that note, or G, A, B, C, that note, those notes also work over the 1 chord and the 5 chord. I'm going to explain that to you in a minute, but let me show you some of the fills and then I'll explain why it doesn't work on the 4 chord. Okay, so if I go like, you hear that like, you notice my fingering up 1, 3, and hammering on that, and then going up to the C note. And you hear that sort of Hendrixy sound. So all I'm doing is I'm putting the C note in there. But now here's a little bit of music theory. Don't tune out on this. This is important stuff. If I go to play this though over a C chord and I'm still in the key of G, my key signature for the key of G is 1 sharp, F sharp. If I go into the key of C and I do this, or if I go into the chord of C, I'm still in the key of G. Actually would use a wrong note like that over top of the C chord. Bach incidentally did that all the time. He would switch back and forth for like a tonality for a brief minute. But anyhow, still works, but you do have to be careful. Sometimes it feels like that note should be. And I know that sounds wrong, but if I place it here though. That F sharp note in there instead of an F natural note. So all that to say, when you're using these chord shapes out of the E forms, be very cautious with using the 4th if you're on the 4 chord. Remember that it's not actually, but it should be that F sharp sort of sound over top of it. Okay, well, we're going to move on now to the next chord shape. All right, so now let's talk about the A forms. So let's say we're in C. I've got a couple of A forms. These incidentally are going to be the same kind of note sounds. You'll hear them over and over that Hendrix does. So if I start again from the high, I can do these 4ths up here, which incidentally are the same for this form. But if you're down here, and then you've got the mid ones. Okay, then I've got my hammer-on type of stuff. The one hammer-on that I can do, and again, remember the 4 chords or the 4th note stuff that I was just talking about. If you're in the key of C, I can do the 4th, which is my F note. So I can do, so hammer on E to F, C to D, G to A, all work, and then also E to F, so you hear those sort of, again, very sort of Hendrixy. Very Hendrix-ish. So now we'll move on to the next chord shape. All right, so the next forms, you're actually going to hear a lot of similarities between the last form. So if I go into like an A minor chord shape that's sort of like looks like an E form, like an E minor form, I've got a lot of the same shapes that I did, that I would do over top of my C forms, okay? Because A minor, check this out. It's almost the same chord. chord, A, C, E, G. C, E, G is a C chord, but I've just got an A on the bottom. Okay? So you can use the same sort of fills. So if I'm in A minor, I can do the same fills that I would use in this C major. So check this out. Now, a lot of times if I'm in A minor, I'll land instead of going down to that D, G, I'll just do so. Okay, then I've also got my hammer-ons, same ones. I've got this same thing here. So that all still works. I can also do basically the scale coming down. That's all my C scale. So you hear that, and it's sort of little wingy type of sounding, you know, with the those sort of fills on that. Okay, so those are the A minor. The low ones, I've got basically pentatonic fills. And then also you can always put in sort of like on the A minor. So let's say you're just vamping on the A minor. So you hear, like, I can put in all those little like pentatonic-y type of fills also, but I'm talking the double stops mostly. Okay, now quick note on it, another music theory thing. If I'm in the key of C or the key of G, these A minor, so if my A minor is a 2 chord or a 6 chord, I can do. But if it's a 3 chord, so let's say I'm in the key of F, okay? What I can't do there is I can't do all that well because you hear it doesn't fit in the scale. The scale is. Phrygian scale if I was thinking modally, which I don't think Hendrix ever thought. He just thought fills. And sometimes, you know, he would still put in those like notes like, you know, and he'd make them work. You heard I played that note in there, which is sort of a wrong note, but you know, he can sort of make them work. But I'd just say use caution on those notes. So if it's a 2 chord, so if you're in the key of G, or if it's the 6 chord, you're in the key of C, those are totally fine. But if it's a 3 chord, you have to be a little bit cautious on that. So if you're doing like a Stormy Monday Blues or something like that, you have to be cautious when you get to the 3 chord, not to play those notes too often. All right, let's move on to the last chords. All right, so the last form we're going to look at is going to be like an A minor form. And I'm going to take this all the way up to E minor, but the same sort of shape you see there that goes up. And there's a couple of different things we can do on this chord when we get to an E minor chord. First of all, you do have the fourths, but on this one, instead of doing like you'd normally do, what I would do is D, G, because those notes are part of my E minor 7th chord. I also have hammer-on pull-offs I could do from each of the notes. And that's a really nice sound that you hear on Okay, and then I also have my series of hammer-ons that I can do. So I can do this one. So that's D and G, and I'm hammering on to E. I can do this one. So that's A and D. And then I can do sort of my pentatonic stuff. So you hear I'm mixing in the pentatonic sounds. All right, so those are the last of the 4 forms for the Hendrix chords, and hopefully they'll help. And I'm going to show you real quick then a quick exercise you can do to kind of learn all of those forms. So here's a quick exercise for you. All right, so here's a little exercise to tie all these things together. It's what I introed with. So I'm going to start off in this G, which is an E major form. So go to an A minor. I'm going to do the exact same forms that I did for this G. And I'm basically just going down my pentatonic. But I'm okay, so then to the B minor. This is a 3 chord, so I have to be cautious with how I'm using it, but so okay, and then so 4th, then to a C chord. And then C, E. Okay, and then I'm on to the E minor. I forget how the fill goes at the end, but so hammer-ons, and then I did something like, and that brings me back to the beginning. If you practice that, you'll sort of get all of the forms of those Hendrixy fills, and hopefully that'll be able to translate into your playing. Again, you don't want to just learn this exercise, but you want to learn how to apply this exercise so that when you're actually playing these sort of chords, you'll have these fills at your fingertips. So hopefully that helps on some Hendrix fills. See you next time. God bless.